sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge secrets inside Prince.
They were saying that the whispers had actually begun weeks before Meghan Markle's birthday, but the noise had reached a fever pitch the moment she posted her glossy celebration photos. Pictures that were meant to capture youthful glow, effortless glamour, and that ever-present Hollywood sheen. But according to commentators online, the effect had backfired spectacularly. Instead of admiring her, people began comparing the images, zooming in, analyzing, debating, and soon the conversation shifted from compliments to questions, and finally to full-blown speculation. It started quietly, the way scandals always do. A murmur here, a raised eyebrow there, nothing loud, nothing official, just a strange unease floating through comment sections and group chats. People weren't angry, they weren't accusing, they were curious. Meghan Markle's birthday photos were polished, glowing, perfectly styled, almost too perfect. The kind of images designed to project control, confidence, and timeless elegance. But instead of applause, they triggered something far more dangerous. Scrutiny. Screens were zoomed in on. Faces were studied like evidence. Lighting angles were debated. And slowly, subtly, admiration dissolved into doubt. Not because she looked bad, but because something felt off. It wasn't cruelty at first. It was comparison. Old photos, old interviews, old red carpets, a digital timeline stitched together by strangers who suddenly believed they saw gaps where there shouldn't be any. And once curiosity turns into speculation, there's no pulling it back.
They shared some pictures. We don't get to see their faces. We get to see the back of their heads, and I think this is promote a little bit more.
People were insisting something wasn't adding up about Meghan's age. Across social media platforms, users were pointing out that she didn't appear to be the age she publicly claimed. Some said the numbers simply didn't match her early acting records. Others were circulating old interviews and resurfaced documents suggesting discrepancies in school records and timelines. And while the majority of this was little more than rumor chatter, it only took one name to ignite the story into something far bigger. Tom Bower. Journalists were reporting that Bower, the seasoned investigative writer known for his relentless deep dives into royal controversies, had been quietly gathering information for months. Sources said he had been telling contacts that Meghan's official age might not be the whole truth and that he had evidence to prove it. According to insiders, Bower had told colleagues that he found a birth certificate that contradicted the age Meghan publicly celebrated. They said he had been describing it as a finding that changes the timeline and one that raises serious questions about authenticity and image management. That's when the mood changed. Because rumors are one thing, but a name like Tom Bower doesn't float into a conversation by accident. He's not a keyboard warrior. He's not chasing clicks. When his name enters a story, it doesn't whisper. It detonates. Suddenly, this wasn't about Instagram photos anymore. This was about documents, timelines, records, a birth certificate, the kind of thing that doesn't care about filters or public relations. The idea that he had been quietly collecting information sent a chill through royal watchers. Because Tom Bower doesn't bluff. He doesn't tease without teeth. And if he was talking about evidence, it meant he believed he had something solid enough to withstand scrutiny. The internet didn't slow down. It sped up.
With a huge mansion in LA, security, their own private bushland from the looks of it, where while the rest of us were locked up in...
People familiar with his work claimed he had no intention of sitting on this information. They said he had been preparing to publish, calling his discovery too significant to ignore. And suddenly, everywhere Meghan turned, the news cycle was repeating the same line. Tom Bower claims he has proof Meghan Markle has been lying about her age. Experts were weighing in. Social media was dissecting shots from Meghan's recent birthday event. Some viewers insisted she had aged far more than her official number would suggest, saying the photographs told a different story. Others argued the stress of the past few years could explain changes in her appearance, but even they admitted the renewed scrutiny came at the worst possible moment for her. Reporters who followed Bower's previous investigations emphasized that he was not someone prone to exaggeration. They said that when he spoke, the royal press listened. They were explaining on air that Bower had a reputation for uncovering uncomfortable truths, often backed by documents, witnesses, and detailed timelines. And when he stated something as bold as this, he was rarely bluffing. One commentator stated on a breakfast show that Bower studies royals the way forensic accountants study financial fraud, line by line, date by date, and without mercy. Others described him as obsessive, meticulous, and unyielding, especially when he believed a public figure was manipulating their image. This was no longer gossip whispered behind screens. It was being spoken out loud, on television, loud, on radio, by people who understood the weight of words. Analysts didn't scream, they measured. They reminded viewers that Bower's past investigations had left powerful people deeply uncomfortable because they were documented. And Meghan, whether innocent or not, was now standing in the eye of a storm she didn't create but couldn't escape.
They could never win. We know now in hindsight that Meghan never really intended to stay. Her guest list to her wedding showed her real ambition.
Those close to the royal beat said Bauer had long suspected Meghan of hiding parts of her past. But this age discrepancy was the most explosive claim yet. According to them, he had suggested privately that certain records didn't align with Meghan's official birth year, that school documents, early job listings, and background checks pointed to an older date. People who had spoken with him reported that he described one particular document, a birth certificate, as having unexpected details. They said he had been clear that the certificate he saw did not match the one Meghan's public narrative had implied. Of course, none of this had been independently verified, and Meghan's team had refused to respond to the story. But their silence, instead of calming speculation, only fueled it. A source close to Bauer told reporters that the writer wasn't just confident in his findings, he was preparing to show them. They said he believed the public had been sold a version of Meghan that wasn't accurate, and that if an age discrepancy existed, it raised bigger questions about what else had been concealed. Meanwhile, people online were comparing Meghan's appearance in her early Suits interviews, where she looked noticeably younger, to her recent public outings. Many commenters argued that the timeline of aging seemed inconsistent with her stated age. Others dug up casting calls and acting directories from the early 2000s, claiming Meghan's listed age at the time contradicted the age she claims now. Some fans defended her, saying Hollywood agents often adjusted ages to increase casting opportunities. But Bauer's supporters countered that the issue wasn't about Hollywood manipulation. It was about honesty, public personas, and a duchess who had repeatedly emphasized transparency while allegedly hiding something significant. Royal analysts were quoted saying that Bauer's report, if true, would trigger a massive credibility crisis. They said this wasn't about vanity, it was about trust. And if Meghan had misrepresented something as fundamental as her age, critics argued it would cast doubt on every timeline she had ever presented, from her personal history to her royal disputes. And behind the scenes, journalists were saying Meghan seemed rattled. According to one correspondent, members of her circle had been calling in favors with friendly publications, trying to redirect headlines and change the narrative. But the story had momentum. It wasn't fading, it was growing. Insiders who claimed to have connections with the Sussex camp were whispering that Meghan felt ambushed, that she never expected her age to become a subject of investigation. They said she felt the scrutiny was cruel, sexist, and rooted in personal vendetta. But the journalists covering Bauer emphasized that his motives had never been emotional. They said he was driven by facts, records, and a long-standing dedication to dissecting powerful public figures, including the royal family itself. Those close to him claimed that Bauer believed Meghan's story had always been too polished, that the dates didn't always line up, and that the image she presented to the world was carefully manufactured, and now he supposedly had the paperwork to prove it. By now, the scandal had stopped being about age. It was about trust, about control, about who gets to tell the story and who gets to question it. Silence became louder than any denial. Every day without a response stretched the tension further. And the more Meghan said nothing, the more others spoke for her. The comparisons, the timelines, the old footage, it all merged into a narrative that felt unstoppable. And then the moment arrived that truly changed everything. The shockwaves didn't stop after Tom Bauer's first reveal. In fact, that moment was just the crack in the dam. What followed was a flood, an avalanche of speculation, commentary, and whispers that had apparently been building for years. And at the center of it all was one question that refused to die. How old is Meghan really? From here, the story became something else entirely. No longer a rumor, no longer just gossip. It became obsession. Tom Bauer stood holding documents, not accusing, not explaining, just presenting. And sometimes presentation is far more devastating than proof. As debates exploded and opinions hardened, one thing became undeniable. This story wasn't going anywhere. Not until every document was laid bare. Not until Meghan spoke, not until the silence broke. And until then, the question lingered, echoing louder with every headline. Who is Meghan Markle really? And as the storm reached its loudest point, the story stopped being about numbers on a page and became something far more unsettling. It became about identity, about perception, about the uncomfortable truth that once doubt enters the public imagination, it never fully leaves. Every smile Meghan gave in public was suddenly reinterpreted. Every silence was analyzed, every old clip replayed with a new lens, as if the past itself had shifted under the weight of suspicion. Tom Bauer, for his part, never chased the chaos he created. He didn't gloat, he didn't dramatize, he let others do that for him. That restraint only made the whispers sharper, because people expect denial, outrage, or defense. What they don't expect is quiet confidence, and that quiet suggested he believed time was on his side, that documents don't age, that records don't bend to public pressure. Meanwhile, Meghan's silence grew heavier by the day. Supporters argued she owed no one an explanation, that a woman's age should never be weaponized, that this entire saga revealed more about society's obsession with women than about her. And yet, even among defenders, there was an unease, not certainty, but curiosity. curiosity, a wondering, because when transparency has been a cornerstone of your public identity, silence feels like a contradiction. The media, sensing blood in the water, circled closer. Pundits debated whether this would fade or explode further. Royal commentators reminded audiences that credibility, once questioned, is painfully hard to restore. And beneath all the noise, one reality became clear. Whether the claims were true, exaggerated, or entirely wrong almost didn't matter anymore. The damage was already emotional, psychological, narrative-driven. This wasn't a scandal with a neat ending. There would be no dramatic courtroom reveal, no stamped verdict that silenced everyone at once. Instead, it would linger. In Google searches, in late-night debates, in half-remembered headlines. A question mark attached permanently to a name, and perhaps that was the most unsettling part of all. That a single allegation, presented calmly and without spectacle, could unravel years of carefully constructed image. That power doesn't always come from shouting, but from letting people wonder, letting them fill in the gaps themselves. As the headlines slowly moved on, the whispers didn't disappear. They softened, they settled, they became part of the background noise that follows public figures forever. And somewhere between silence and speculation, Meghan Markle remained exactly where she had always been. Watched, debated, and defined as much by what she didn't say as by what she did. In the end, no certificate answered the deeper question. No document closed the conversation, because this story was never truly about age. It was about belief. And once belief fractures, it never fully heals.